In January of 2021, I started building out this plan to take on 4 new clients. So I'd signed, or I'd agreed to take on 4 different clients, all over 1 million subscribers. And that was just fully, you know, I was fully on the path to doing that and building out this kind of portfolio of clients. And then MrBeast came calling. So I kind of put all that on ice. And essentially I transitioned from working with Loverfella to MrBeast. He was like, dude, and he was like, what's your, you know, he's like, what's your number? What's your Discord? And they were just asking me like, you know, how do you know this stuff? Like, where did you learn this? And I just described like working with these channels and, you know, being really into data and everything. And they're like, this is really good stuff. And essentially Jimmy from that point on was like, I'd love you to come work, you know, on an ongoing basis with us on a bit more of a full-time situation. So that was January, started working with him sort of end of January.
Paddy Galloway, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, man. Looking forward to talking.
For people who don't know you, I think you're one of the best consultants, YouTube consultants in the world right now. I think it's not a crazy statement to make. You've worked with huge clients like MrBeast, while at the same time managing to build your own very successful YouTube channel where you break down some of the most successful YouTubers like MrBeast, Mark Robert, Logan Paul. And I actually think that the YouTube channel is a great place to start because if I'm not mistaken, that's where the whole consulting business adventure started. So do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. And that's something I mentioned to a lot of people is like, if you want to work in an industry, you better make sure you like the industry and you better make sure it's an industry that you're actually passionate about yourself. So like I've been making YouTube videos since I was 11 or 12 years old. Just whatever I was interested in at the time, whatever hobby I had, I'd always make a channel for. So for me to transition to working in this industry and building a business around this industry is a bit of a dream. It's a bit of a passion project turned into a business, which has been a great blessing.
Nice. So how did the idea for the channel and the concept for the Paddy Galloway YouTube channel come about? Yeah,
I think, you see, the thing that's interesting about my story, I think, if I don't say so myself, is a lot of people like YouTube for the kind of the creative side. And don't get me wrong, I do like being a creative myself and, you know, thinking of ideas and filming and stuff like that. But when I look back over my childhood of growing up with YouTube and working on all these different channels that I was trying to build, it was always the audience building and like the technicalities behind YouTube that really interested me. Like how the algorithm works, how the algorithm promotes content, what length of content to make, all these things. And back in the day, there was a lot more what I would describe as exploits, which is fascinating to someone like me, little things you could do to make your video blow
like
up.
Hacks.
Or, yeah, little trend hacks or little growth hacks or stuff like that. And I found that fascinating. I really enjoyed it. So I was actually studying YouTube like crazy anyway, just as a YouTuber. I was studying other creators. I was studying viral videos on YouTube, the trending page. And I had all these notes and I had all this research and I was like, this is actually really interesting. So I already had the channel that, if people know me, they probably know me from, Paddy Galloway. I already had that existing, but it was a channel I was using for something else. And one day I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing with this channel. I don't really have a purpose for it. Here's a page of notes I just took on Peter McKinnon, who was one of the fastest growing channels at the time. And I was like, would it be kind of cool if I maybe made these notes into a video? And I was watching a few other YouTubers at the time who weren't doing it with YouTube, but they'd been doing it in other areas, like breaking down businesses or the rise of Apple and stuff like that, and doing these kind of video essays. And I was like, it'd be really cool to do that on a YouTuber. And again, I did a Google around to see if anyone else was doing it. No one else was doing it, which I was like, this is either a good thing, there's an opportunity, or it's because no one wants this content. So I really didn't know. And I uploaded the video, which was in 2017, which was called How Peter McKinnon Gained 1 million subscribers in 1 year. And I uploaded it, and in the first like few days, it flopped. Like it bombed really hard. It had like.
So this was the first video on the channel?
It wasn't. That was the interesting thing. So as I was saying, I had this channel already built up, and I had some other videos on there. I used to do like kind of breakdowns on how much YouTubers made and how much like professional athletes made. So I had a video which had like, you know, over 1 million views, which was how much famous MMA fighters make. I had some videos on like the sidemen of like who's the richest sidemen YouTuber that had like 1.9 million views. So I had actually a channel with about 20,000 subscribers or maybe 15,000 subscribers. And I had a bit of an audience there. So I did expect, you know, I did expect some views on this video. So when I released it and I saw 200 views or 100 views after a week and like, you know, 1 like and 2 dislikes, I was like, yeah, maybe people aren't actually interested in it. And like the audience on the channel, like a few people commented and were like, you know, what is this? Like, we don't care. This is way too like nerdy. Like, we don't care about this. And so I kind of gave up on it. And I was like, this, you know, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe YouTube isn't for me. Maybe this actual, you know, really in-depth analysis, you know, is just not that interesting to a broader audience. And I thought that, went away. And funnily enough, I was actually in Dublin. I live about an hour outside Dublin in Ireland. And I was talking to this guy who worked with a previous employer of mine. And he was like, oh, I just watched your YouTube video on Peter McKinnon and I really liked it. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting because, you know, how would he find that? Like, I was just so curious because I'd actually signed out of the studio. I hadn't looked at the channel. I just completely signed out of that email account and everything. And I went back in and I just opened up YouTube Studio and the video was on 200,000 views. And I was like, damn. And then a few days later, Peter McKinnon had tweeted it and it basically rose up to about 600,000 or 700,000 views in the space of a month. And that was on a channel, like, and I said I had viral videos in the past because I was really good at making viral content. But for this type of niche of like YouTube advice, it's pretty unheard of for a video to do like, you know, most of these videos back then had like 2,000 or 3,000 views of how to grow on YouTube or whatever. So for a YouTube breakdown video to get that many views, I was like, damn, there's something big here. And it's kind of just gone from there, really. Nice.
Yeah, it's a couple of things are interesting. Like, number one, it seems like the channel you had before, you're kind of like experimenting with different formats, right? And I feel like that, I mean, having worked with you like on Noah's channel, like we've kind of had a similar journey. We're like trying a bunch of stuff, right? Trying a bunch of formats, and then like one format works well. And then, I mean, the smart thing to do then is to double down on that and just like do the same formula over and over and over, which is kind of what you did. But yeah, and so from there, at the time, just give us a little context. You were working a job, or like what was the context like before that video went viral? And I think that kind of led you to consider YouTube a little more seriously as a career, right? So can you talk a little about that?
Yeah, it's actually quite an interesting journey because when you look at it in hindsight, I did make mistakes. Like I didn't actually do it perfectly, and all of those mistakes have led to, you know, the position I'm in now. So I'm not regretful of them. But essentially that video went viral and I was in college at the time. I was studying in college. I was doing a degree in Dublin, basically a mixture of technology, business, some marketing, all kind of mixed into one degree. And it was a fun degree and I just really wasn't sure, you know, what I wanted to do in the future. I was like, this is kind of interesting. I quite like business. I quite like marketing. I quite like data. And I was like, I don't really know what the future holds for me, because at that point I had successful YouTube channels in the past, which had made, you know, me reasonable money, enough money to pay for my living in college and to kind of just to afford my lifestyle at the time, which wasn't a baller lifestyle by any means, but it got me by. But I was in this position where I was like, I don't know if I should keep doing the YouTube thing or if I should, you know, just focus on my college career and, you know, after that get a job in a typical kind of corporate company or whatever and just climb up the ranks. I put out that video, and the interesting thing is I think 99% of people listening to this would say, amazing, you doubled down, right? But I didn't really. What I did was, about a month later, I made a video on Casey Neistat, and that was really good as well. And it did, I think, like 500,000 or 600,000 views too. Again, on a very small channel, it was like ridiculously viral. But I actually ended up taking a job instead of really focusing on the YouTube channel. And if you look on my YouTube channel, it's really interesting because between like 2018 and 2019, I basically went a year without posting. I think I posted like one video in the space of a year. And that was on a channel that was blowing up. You know, like by every metric you would look at the channel. And like even financially, like I'd gone from, you know, when you're a college kid, you don't really make anything. And the Peter McKinnon video did like 600,000 or 700,000 views. I remember the paycheck for that month came in at like $2,500 or $3,000. And I was like, this could have been a career. And I just kind of, I don't want to say I threw it down the drain, but I just kind of maybe thought to myself, it's not stable. It's not, you know, the biggest opportunity it could be. So I took a job. I worked in an agency for a year, in a kind of startup agency, like a marketing agency. And that was a lot of fun and I learned a lot from it. But after I finished that, I was just like, damn, I've got this channel here. So this is 2019 by the time I finished. I was like, damn, I've got this channel here. It's still getting views. Like the videos, like the Peter McKinnon video and the Casey Neistat video, the crazy thing about those videos were, they were so evergreen that even after 2 years, they were still pulling in a lot of views every month, and they were still making
wild.
actually some decent side money on the side. And I just sort of said to myself, you know what, I might give this another go, because I was like, you know, it's either this or I just go from this office job to then maybe working like a, you know, and I had a few job opportunities at the time in like some big tech firms and stuff. And I was like, I could go that route. And I was like, I'm just going to give it a try. I'm going to give it a swing and see what happens. So between August and December of that year, I just started posting again. Nothing crazy, like 1 video a month. I put good effort into them. I remember the first one did like 40,000 views. And I was like, okay, it's not 600,000, but it's okay. And the second one did like 100,000. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Maybe there's something there. And then the third one in the first week did about 800 views or 1,000 views. And I was like, oh, never mind. I'm just in dreamland. Like this isn't going to work.
It's like you're always like you get like some positive data, and then it's like, oh, stop dreaming, Paddy.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Back to reality.
It's like YouTube just tapping on my shoulder. It's like, no, not tonight, mate. This isn't for you. This isn't for you. But the funny thing was, so that video flopped, and I was considering saying, you know, this YouTube thing. I also thought it was a bit, you know, especially in Ireland, and my friends were really supportive of it, but at the same time, it was something that you'd be kind of like, yeah, it's just kind of a silly little thing I'm doing. You know, you wouldn't really I wasn't really taking it seriously. At that time, I had maybe 39,000 subscribers around there. And I said, okay, here's the thing. I've just got a job offer in Accenture, which is a big consulting firm, a big tech consulting firm. I've got some other job offers on the table as well. But I'm going to give this YouTube thing one more try. And I don't want to like make this too dramatic and make it sound like, you know, it was my last shot and I had to do it. But I actually said it to myself. I was like, I'm going to give this a go. So I made one video, and that video was on MrBeast. And I said, with this video, I'm going to just do everything I know about YouTube, everything I know about the YouTube algorithm, everything I know about how to make interesting content. And I'm going to put it in one video and see what happens. And I released that video on December 17th, 2019. And that video went on. Today, it has 6.2 million views. And, you know, it's completely changed my trajectory. So that happened, and I didn't make the same mistake of not capitalizing. And I've been uploading ever since.
And isn't there a funny story about like hitting a certain number on like Christmas or something like that?
Yeah, no, it was really funny because like, and this is a trend I see a lot on my channel, and you'll see a lot with other channels that make kind of video essay content that's not time specific. It's kind of evergreen. So I released that video on December 17th, and for the first week, it was doing really well, but it had like maybe 20 or 30,000 views. And I remember on the 23rd of December, Nate O'Brien, and the finance YouTuber, commented on the video and was like, this was really good. It's going to get 1 million views. And I remember I replied to him because I was like, oh, I love your videos, Nate. And I was like, yeah, right. You know, I'll be happy with 50. I remember saying that I'll be happy with 50,000. Then on the 24th, which would be Christmas Eve, I woke up and the video had just gone nuclear. Like it was doing like 20 or 30,000 views an hour. And again, on a very small channel, like I was getting more views per hour than my subscriber count at one point. So I was like, this is just bonkers. And
that's viral.
Yeah. Christmas Eve, it did 400,000 or 500,000 views. Christmas Day, it did 510,000 views. And actually until last year, that was still the highest views I'd ever gotten one day in 2019.
Oh, really?
On Christmas Day 2019. So I was like, yeah, this is a decent Christmas present. I think I'm gonna keep going from here.
You're like, Mom and Dad, thanks for presents, but this is this is not gonna beat the views. At that point, you were considering a job with Accenture. Then you get this banger video on MrBeast. Did that finally convince you? Like, okay, like let's go. Like, it's like I can make a living from this.
It did. But because, and this is something, I don't think it's always common among entrepreneurial types, because when I look back at my history and everything I've done, even as like a 5 and 6 year old, and when I was in school and everything else, I'm clearly an entrepreneur. Like it's you know, it's just so clear from what my behaviors are, what I think. Mm-hmm. Like when I was in school, I was, you know, I had a little business selling sweets. When I was like 5 or 6, I used to sell secondhand toys to like my friends and my brother and stuff. So when I look back, I'm like, it's so clear I was a businessman. But I still always had that tiny bit of doubt. And I think some of it does come from being from Ireland. And Ireland's a brilliant country. But, you know, there is that level of kind of, you know, this is your place, kind of a little bit of small town mentality, a little bit that maybe had ingrained its way into my head. So I did double down on it. And I was like, okay, I want to make this my career. But I actually did accept the job offer from Accenture. I remember I'd gone to Tenerife with my girlfriend. And we'd spent 5 or 6 days in Tenerife, and I was like, this is beautiful. And I was looking at my analytics the whole time, and you know, I was making decent money. I think December of 2019, I made like 11 or 12K, and that was coming through then, because you know, when you make money on YouTube, you get paid on the 21st of the next month. So that came through while I was in Tenerife, and I was looking at that. I was like, this is amazing. But still, when I was flying back on the plane, I just read through the contract with Accenture, and I was like, I'm just going to sign this. You know, because I could always just pull out. That's what I kind of said to myself. And that's kind of what I ended up doing. Like, I didn't like leave them hanging or anything. I gave them lots of notice, but essentially as things kept going and going, and this is something I tease my mother with quite a lot, but she like, even when I had like, I think 100,000 subscribers and I was making, you know, 5 to 10,000 a month, my mother still thought I should take the job in Accenture. And I remember just saying, yeah, I just rang up Accenture and told them that I'm having to pull out.
She must have freaked out.
Yeah, she was pretty accepting of it, to be fair to her. She just, you know, she's never been pushy, but she was very much like, oh, it's stable, you know, it's a stable job, stable opportunity. But yeah, looking back, thank God I made the right choice, and I doubled down on YouTube. And since then it's been, yeah, just YouTube everything. Even if I'm working in something a little bit outside of my own channel, it's still YouTube, you know, whatever I do.
Yeah. How did the YouTube consulting stuff start coming in? Like you have this successful channel. I mean, you have this like up and coming channel, right? That's like affording you to make a living from it. Why did you how did you start doing getting into consulting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it originally came from just a kind of want to have a bit of stability, because like I said, like YouTube cash flow is very sporadic. It can be up and down. You can make, you know, 12K in December and then 2K in February, you know, like it's very sporadic. So I was like, I thought this would be like an interesting thing to do on the side that would also, you know, help sharpen my axe in a way and keep getting better at YouTube and keep learning about YouTube myself anyway. In 2019, before that really big blow up, I had been working with a few like Irish companies, a few people on video content and on YouTube. And I found it like it was fun, but there was always like a limit because they weren't YouTubers, you know. They were like, oh, this is a really cool platform. You know, how could I create a YouTube channel? But they weren't coming at it from the angle of like, I'm already a YouTuber. Can you come in and help me get better? And that's what I quickly realized.
Were those people reaching out to you, or did you reach out to them, or did they come through like the social media agency you're working with? Like
they were reaching out to me, and then a mixture of the social media agency as well. And actually inside in the social media agency as well, I worked with the founder a little bit and shot some content with him and helped him with his channel a little bit. And I was like, this is interesting, but yeah, I didn't really see like a huge upside. And actually, funny you bring that up. I want to talk about that later. Is I've actually never reached out in my life for YouTube consulting ever, and that's not even a brag. It's just it seems to be the way it's happened. I've actually never had to like shoot a cold message, a cold email. When I had previous businesses back, you know, when I was younger, sure I did, because you'd be stupid not to do cold calling and stuff like that. But so far in my journey, it's always been people reaching out, and that kind of brings me into how I got working with Loverfella, which was a large Minecraft channel. So I started working with him in 2020. And as I said,
how big was he at the time?
Maybe like 1.5 million, around that. And I think now he's got like maybe 3.5, 4 million, I think roughly.
Okay.
And I remember he reached out, he just sent a message. He was like, I really like your videos. I'm hiring for a creative director. You know, would you be interested in interviewing and coming onto the team and working with me? And again, I was like, this is kind of like stable income every month. Could be fun. I actually didn't even know how valuable it would be to him or how valuable it would be to me. I actually was a bit going to it blind. And it was working with him that I realized, you know, I'd actually built up a really good skill set over years of making all these channels. Like even the things I told you about earlier with the, you know, the MMA fighters, who's the richest, you know, getting millions of views, and the Sidemen video, you know, I built up this really good skill set for viral content. I had a really good eye for it. So working with him, I was able to really funnel that, because he was posting 10 videos a week. And I'd be working on pretty much all the videos, like in terms of, you know, the reviewing the editing, the pacing, the structure, the thumbnail, the title, which idea to pursue in the first place. And we had a really interesting trajectory with him where, you know, when I first started working with him, he was doing about 20 million views a month. And then by the time I'd finished working with him, he was doing about 60 million views a month. And in no way was that just solely down to me at all. But it was very interesting to see how a lot of the things I was learning and trying were working in real time. And I think that's an interesting thing. Like if you're in an industry like YouTube, and especially if you're working on 10 videos a week, or you've got access to the data from 10 videos a week and you're constantly getting feedback right away over how they did, you accelerate your learning so fast. So like I was learning things so fast. Like I was like, let's test out 5 different intros and let's test them on like, you know, similar types of content. Let's keep controls. So like how many views the video got, we would judge the intros after the same amount of views or whatever to kind of have some level of control. And we test things like that. And I'd come back and be like, okay, these are the best intros. Let's do more of these. How do we get better retention in the midpoint? What could we do there? Which thumbnail style is better? Like at what point should you switch a thumbnail after uploading? These are all things that I could test and then like tomorrow get feedback on, you know, because of the daily content. So that accelerated my learning a huge amount, and I just learned an insane amount by the time I finished working with him. Because
not only are you getting more output, like 10 videos a week, but you're also getting more data as far as views, right? Because like he had a million plus YouTube channel, and so yeah, it's like that just compounds the learning.
Exactly. Right? You're not kind of like stabbing in the dark. You know, you get clear eyeballs on your videos. So like it is a difficult thing. I do sympathize with smaller YouTubers who are sometimes a little bit disillusioned with their data because they're like, well, you know, I just don't have enough people on the channel to even get good data. So like it is a real benefit to working with a bigger channel because like we had an average of about 300,000 or 400,000 viewers a video. So when you think about it like that, it's like, there's a lot of eyeballs and a lot of data that we can get back.
So was that a full-time position?
It wasn't. It was on a monthly basis, and I was doing about, I would estimate about 20 hours a week. So part-time.
Okay.
But when I took him on, he was my only client. And, you know, I didn't even really see it as a future thing. Like I didn't really think this would be a business, or I didn't really think there'd be much, you know, kind of even like I was even a little bit unsure about the value I could provide him. And then after a while I was like, damn, like, you know, this is actually pretty insane. And he was really happy and he wanted to work longer term together.
It seems very like, for you at the time was like, oh, like I get to learn for free. I mean, I get paid to learn more about YouTube that I can apply on my channel, right? While like being super valuable to this guy. So also, I wanted to ask you how much, if you don't mind talking about that, how much was he paying you at the time? I just want to do the contrast to like what you're charging today, but.
Yeah, it was a lot less. It was in the range of kind of like, I think between $30 and $50 an hour. Okay. Which, and to be fair to him at the time, I didn't have experience and I had experience growing my own channels, but I hadn't proven I could do it with others.
Yeah, 100%. And that's usually how you start, like behind the scenes, right? It's like you're very valuable to the business, but like you're learning. It's almost like I said, it's like you're getting paid to learn, right? Yeah. And so it's like it's a fair deal in the beginning, and as you gain more skills and like understand your worth more, you can charge more. But
yeah, because if I had said to him, oh, it's $100 an hour, which to be fair, like a lot of people charge for consultancy type stuff or strategy type stuff. I'd said it's $100 an hour. But that was my first opportunity. He might have said no, you know, and then it would have been like...
It was more important for him to say yes than to get paid more. Yeah,
exactly.
So from that point, when did you start taking on more clients?
Yeah, around December of 2020 and January of 2021, I just started doing bits and pieces with other people. So just like one-off calls, conversations with other YouTubers and helping them with bits and pieces there. Because when I was working with Loverfella, it wasn't like exclusive. It wasn't like I was just working with him. It was like, you know, if I had more time, I could work with other people. And then in January of 2021, I started building out this plan to take on 4 new clients. So I'd signed or I'd agreed to take on 4 different clients, all over 1 million subscribers. And that was just fully, you know, I was fully on the path to doing that and building out this kind of portfolio of clients. And then MrBeast came calling. So I kind of put all that on ice, and essentially I transitioned from working with Loverfella to MrBeast in the space of about a month without too much. Like I did some other client work here and there, bits and pieces, like someone just, hey, can I get on a call with you? How much does it cost? Jump on a call together, do a bit of work like that. But it was the transition from working with Loverfella to Jimmy, and Jimmy was pretty much full time when I was working with him.
And how did that come about? Did he DM you too, or?
Yeah, it's a great story. So when I actually made that first video on MrBeast in 2019, and this is a funny way of how relationships can grow on the internet, because you know that video in itself obviously changed my life in terms of the channel. It made me a lot of money and whatever, but it also created this connection between me and Jimmy. So he had reached out to me after that video and said, you know, this is a great video. Congratulations on the success you've had with it. And at the time, Jimmy was still huge. MrBeast, I should say, for the audience, was still huge. It wasn't as big as he is now, but he was still a massive YouTuber. So that meant a lot to me, to have the person I made the video on reach out and say, this was really good. Like, congratulations on the success of it. And then throughout 2020, like every now and again, we would just chat a little bit on Twitter. I remember I was on a group call with him at one point. He would like reply to some of my tweets sometimes, or send me my tweets and ask me questions. And because I think he was just interested about what I was doing, and he saw that I had the same kind of philosophy to YouTube of being very, you know, obsessive and driven and data focused. And essentially he saw the work I was doing with Loverfella, and he saw the work I was doing with my own channel, and he was like, you know, this guy's smart. He knows how YouTube works. He's making a lot of content. And when you do good work with someone, kind of word gets around. You're like, oh, like, why is his channel doing this? Or like, where did he get those thumbnails from? Oh, it's this thumbnail designer. You know, you're kind of, the word of mouth is still really strong, even with something like this. And Jimmy essentially reached out to me and he was like, you know, I think what you're doing is really cool. I'd love to see if there's an opportunity for us to work together. In fact, I do want you to work with me. So I just guess let's just kind of feel it out and see what a good opportunity is. Maybe you come in a few hours a week. Maybe we just do like some team training with you where you come in and help with the team, or maybe you do come in a bit more. We'll just see. We'll kind of feel it out. He was very kind of a bit casual, which I liked. It was like, you know, let's just feel it out. There's no big commitment here needed. And essentially that same night when he gave me that first phone call, he sent me a draft for one of his videos that was going to be posted on that Saturday. So this was like, I think it was Wednesday, and it was going to be posted on a Saturday. And he was like, here's a draft for one of my videos. I'd love to see what you think.
Do you remember which video that was?
It was the I ate $100,000 golden ice cream, which at the moment is about 103 million views, I think, which is pretty insane. But he'd sent me a link to that video, and I remember I just went in, and I was like, you know, it's 1 a.m. my time, because he's obviously on EST, so he wasn't even thinking about my time. And he was like, you know, would you leave some notes on this, or would you give me your thoughts on this? And I was like, you know, it's 1 a.m. I could just go to bed and do it in the morning, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to blow him away. So I remember I went downstairs, I got a coffee, came back upstairs, and I worked for like 3 hours just going through the video scene by scene and just giving my thoughts. And like, none of it was like ultimatum, like you have to change this, or you did this wrong. But it's more like, I would have done this differently, or I would actually change this editing effect, or I would get MrBeast to shoot a new voiceover for this section where he says this instead. And essentially I did that, and then I messaged Jimmy. I was like, hey Jimmy, that's done. He's like, oh, thanks. And I probably didn't even check it because he was doing something else. He was like, oh, thanks. And I was like, oh, he just said, oh, thanks, or whatever. And then I remember, you know, about 5 or 10 minutes later, when he obviously did open it up and checked it, he was like, dude, and he was like, what's your number? What's your Discord? And they were just asking me, like, you know, how do you know this stuff? Like, where did you learn this? And I just described like working with these channels and, you know, being really into data and everything. And they're like, this is really good stuff. And essentially Jimmy from that point on was like, I'd love you to come work, you know, on an ongoing basis with us on a bit more of a full-time situation. So that was January. Started working with him sort of end of January, and basically worked with him for about four months, and worked on some really big videos. And I worked full-time as well, so it was all my time was with him, and it was crazy.
What are some of the videos you remember working on?
Giving away houses for $1. That was a good one.
That was a big one too, right? Yeah.
The Buried Alive video. That was the hardest one to work on, but that was actually, until his Squid Game video, that was his most viral video of all time. And so I worked on that video. Me and the editor got so much footage back because it was 50 hours. And then obviously everyone had cameras. So the poor editor and the editing team had so much footage to go through. And then I remember me and the editor were getting on calls together, and I was like, is there a scene where he does this? And he was like, Paddy, there probably is. And I was like, can we get it? And he's like, yeah, I guess we can. We were just going through like
that one decision like is impacting like the next 12 hours of his life, like going through footage and stuff. So what exactly, can you just describe exactly what you're doing with the team? And like, let's take the example of like that video, like just describing like from start to finish, like what was your role and what were your responsibilities? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of hard to really define it, because it was a mixture of, like, if I describe it as anything, it's kind of almost like a channel manager or channel consultant role. So I was focused on just the main channel. I wasn't focused on any of his other channels. It was just the main channel. And essentially for every video, I didn't really help with the pre-planning. So I didn't really help with the ideas or the, you know, the kind of scripting ahead of time. But what I would help with would be like the thumbnail concept of like building out the thumbnail, deciding on the title, and then the actual video itself, I would just go through with the editor. So like he would get all the footage and he'd come up with like a rough first draft. And then me and him would just go through and piece it together. We get on calls together. So I guess it was a mixture of just thumbnail and title feedback and then actual in-depth video reviews. And it's crazy that's a full-time position, but when someone is doing the kind of content he's doing, you know, having a consultant or having a strategist like full-time focusing on just, you know, the reviews and thumbnail title feedback was necessary. So
just to give some context for people that aren't super familiar with YouTube, like the reason you're doing all of these things is like basically YouTube, you're trying, like there's two metrics that really matter, right? Like the average view duration or retention, right? And then the click-through rate. And so like on the title thumbnail angle that you're working with the designers, like it's like making the design of the thumbnail 1% better, like on a video that like ultimately gets like hundreds of millions of views, like has a huge impact, right? And same with like the retention of the video, which is why you're like leaving hundreds of notes on here, and like going over, like having like a existential decision to make about like whether to cut a scene that costs like 50 grand. The reason why you're like you're going to that extent is because like every second in one of those videos like makes a huge difference on the results, right?
Exactly. It's a game of numbers. It's sometimes just deciding if we left this scene in, is it contributing to the story? Is it progressing the story forward? And even it might be a funny scene, but if it kind of distracts from something else that happens right afterwards, it's not worth it. So it's just this constant game of like almost performing surgery on a video and being like, okay, what do we leave in? What do we keep out? And it's I guess it's with Jimmy, it's just often like, if you think about, you get a lot of smart people, and this is something I definitely want to emphasize, is when I was working with him, it wasn't like I was calling all the shots or running the channel. Like he has this insane team, and I was just a cog in the wheel helping it. And I was having an impact, and I was really getting a lot of fulfillment from it. But like, you know, even with thumbnails, like I was advising and helping on thumbnails, but like the thumbnail team was insane. And Chucky, who works with MrBeast, is probably the smartest person I've ever talked to about thumbnails. So like, you know, having all these insane people obsessing over all these different areas in YouTube and spending so much time on them is just insane. Because when you think about it, if you take someone like me, and he's also Jimmy also has this guy called Mario Juice at the moment, who helps him with retention at the moment, and he's like really smart, extremely smart, really into retention. So when you have people like me or like Mario or like Chucky or these other people involved, then you say to them, here's a video, like instead of the normal review time, which is like an hour, which is what most people review a video in, or 30 minutes. What happens if you just review it for like 10 hours or like a whole week? You know, what happens? Like maybe you go crazy, but if you're really intelligent and you're really smart and you're really thinking about it, it makes you analyze every moment. So when you look at any MrBeast video, you know, during the time I work with him, but since still, when he's leveled it up even further, the Squid Game video, if you look at those videos, every single scene, there's a decision behind it. You know, it's thought out. It's decided why that would be placed here instead of here, or why, you know, this scene came first, or why this intro was different to this intro. That's all planned. And yeah, it's incredible the levels they're pushing it.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. I mean, they're the best. They're the best of the best. What are interesting things you noticed about his team, or like how, what does a YouTube team, you don't have to go into details, but like what does his YouTube team look like, and like what are things that you learned from like working with them as a organization, as a business, you know?
Yeah, I think what I really, and again, I was remote, so I didn't see, you know, all the kind of, you know, inner workings of how things worked actually on set. I was actually going to fly out, but we weren't allowed with COVID. Irish flights were banned to America. But from what I could tell from the remote working, and, you know, I did work, there was different people working, like went to the different meetings and talked with plenty of people in the company. Most of the big shots in the company I was talking with and working with. And what I noticed was, first of all, there was a lot of very young people, like in a great way, like, you know, young, fresh people. It's not like he was like, oh, I'm a YouTuber, I need to hire like lots of really experienced, you know, producers who worked on Amazon originals or something. Like it was like, I want to hire like young, hungry YouTubers and YouTube focused people. So the average team age was very young, but there was also like a mixture of like experienced people in there as well, which I thought was really interesting, because you can't really go too far in one way. Like if you're a YouTuber and you try to build like this really experienced corporate team around you, it's not best for content. But if you're a YouTuber and you just hire, you know, hungry kids, it's a mess. Yeah. You know? So you had like a nice blend of experienced people. A lot of people, like one thing I did notice, which I quite liked, was how so much of his team and his operation is built up of people either he grew up with, or family, or people kind of involved in that way. And you might think, you know, a cynical person might say, you know, could you not find, is there not someone better or this or that? But the the reality of it is a lot of these people are in new industries and they've just obsessed over that thing and they've become like the best. And Jimmy, being around Jimmy has made them so experienced and so strong in these areas.
Yeah.
And
so
also,
he hires like a lot of hungry people, it seems like, that placed in that environment will thrive, right?
Exactly. And another thing I thought as well is, if you're a YouTuber with that level of fame, having people you can trust is just insanely important. So like, you know, even like he's worked with Chris in the videos. Like he's known Chris since he was like 5 or 6 or something, you know. It would be easy. You see like the Paul brothers and the amount of controversies they've had with people who have come along and they've been in the videos, but then they backstab them or this happens. And I'm not saying the Paul brothers are innocent by any means, but you know, there's all this kind of drama and stuff going on with them. You never hear any of that with Jimmy. That's because he's got people, generally speaking, who he can trust. And they're not, it's not like he grew up with everyone he works with, but a lot of the people in the team have that relationship with him that, you know, they know him a long time. They've been working with him for a long time. And yeah, that was a learning. And then I think the overarching thing for me is just how like more channels should probably treat YouTube like a startup. Now, not everyone. And that's the thing. And yeah, the way they're operating is more like a kind of Silicon Valley startup than a typical creator business. You know, obviously you can tell from Jimmy that this is very public knowledge. He spends pretty much everything he makes. And that's, you know, it seems crazy. Like everyone says he's crazy, and he is crazy. Don't get me wrong. But if you said, here's a Silicon Valley startup and they're spending everything they make, that wouldn't be that crazy. You know, that's what startups do when they're growing. You know, they pour money on the fire and try to grow faster. So yeah, that was the kind of overarching thing for me. It's like how, you know, the returns on YouTube are so exponential that it makes sense to burn money and to really like focus on scaling and building a team behind you, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like if your goal, like this lifestyle and growth, if your goal is to growth and like to grow the channel, then you should absolutely treat it like a startup. And I actually interviewed Leon Hendricks 2 weeks ago, and like he has kind of like a story like that, where it's like he's like around the same subscriber level as you on YouTube, but like in 1 year he's like just treated like a business, you know, and now he's like starting to see returns, and he's still just like reinvesting everything into the business, and just like it's everything. Like there's a lot of analogies, right? Like the vision you have for the channel, right? The like bringing on a team, like building a team around you, right? Where it's like not just one creator, but like you're bringing on like someone that's going to handle business. You're bringing on an editor. You're going to bring someone on that's going to like handle partnerships, you know? So yeah, I love that startup analogy for YouTubers. I think more and more you're going to, because it's also like it's a new business model, right? It's like a YouTube channel. Like a successful YouTube channel can bring in like a significant amount of revenue, and you can build like a whole brand and like spin off like I mean, like MrBeast has like MrBeast Burger now, and it's like you can spin off a lot of products from the audience that you've built. Yeah,
literally. And that all speaks to this kind of industry that me and you are working in, you know, the behind the scenes, and this you know, this entire podcast in a way. Because when you start to think of YouTube as a business, you know, businesses need, you know, external help. They need people that are going to come in on the consultancy side, or just, you know, helping them with the strategy decisions, or, you know, advisors. Like businesses need these type of things, and people don't always associate that with YouTube channels. And I think a lot of YouTube channels, they maybe get to the point, let's just say you're making like 20K a month, and that's great, that's an amazing living, but you might get to the point where you're making 20K a month, and you could potentially bring someone in who could, and this isn't just me selling myself, because yeah, I think this is true for anyone that works behind the scenes in YouTube, but you could potentially bring someone in for 1,000, a few thousand a month, depending on how many, you know, calls you want to do with them, that if they're good, and that's kind of the key thing there, if they're good, they could double that. You know, like it depends on, obviously a lot of it is down to execution and whatever, but like what business do you know where you can literally go into a channel and double revenue by increasing views? Like I actually have another client, I won't name, but we've been working together since, it's almost been a year, I think August or July of last year. And when I first started working with him, he's on the smaller side in terms of my clients. He was doing about 2.5 million views a month, and now he's doing like 5.5 to 6 million views a month. And when you think about that, in real terms, that's like 10 months to, and that's not like the, you know, that's not the most insane growth story. There's more insane growth stories out there, but when you think about it really logically, someone has literally doubled, if not nearly tripled their revenue in the space of 10 months. And again, it's not always down to the consultant, it's not always down to the strategist, it's down to the YouTuber, the decisions they make as well. But if you were to ask this guy, because he was actually just showing me a message he sent to one of his friends who asked about me, actually. He was like, you know, it's the best investment I ever made, was actually looking for external help. You know, again, someone who knew what they were talking about, to come in and be able to pick holes in what I'm doing. And, you know, like having that extra help could be the difference between a channel making 20K and 40K, you know? So that's why it's so valuable. And that's why I actually think really strongly about this. Over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more behind the scenes. Like obviously we're going to see more behind the scenes help with YouTube, but way more specialists. So at the moment, like someone like me, and this comes from the fact I'm a YouTuber originally. Like I originally am a creator, and I think that's really useful for a business, or for a channel. But I feel like in 3 or 4 years time, there's going to be even more specialist positions. So title specialists, people that just work on titles. I even think like an intro specialist. Like I think that is going to be a role. Like there's going to be, like imagine if someone's listening to this, you could steal this idea, but imagine if your whole business model was just essentially studying YouTube intros. So working with lots of YouTubers, and that's the key thing. You have to work with YouTubers first. So maybe just working behind the scenes with them as like creative directors or channel managers, something that's maybe a little less income. It's more of a kind of, how would I describe it? More of like a job than an actual business. But doing that for a few years and getting really good at understanding retention curves and seeing the data and the intros. And then just getting to the point where you just obsess over intros. You ask YouTubers, can I study your intros? And in exchange, I'll give you some feedback on how you're doing with them. And you just constantly build up this portfolio of understanding how intros work. And you get to the point where maybe you're one of the best people in the world at writing intros. And the reason I bring this up is because I've been ghostwriting intros for some of my clients at the moment. And I've been thinking about it, I'm like, damn, there's probably like, someone could probably make 200 or 300K a year being an intro specialist for like 5 or 6 big channels, and they just help them write their intros because intros are so important.
So valuable.
So yeah, it's insane the kind of the growth of the industry. And I think if we were sitting here 5 years ago, it would be amazing to think how far it's come. So what's it going to be like in another 5 years? Like I can't even predict. It's going to be crazy.
It's exciting. It's exciting. I mean, one of the big ones I see that is still like, I mean, there's way more like demand for it than there's supply right now, is like just like a thumbnail designer, right? Like the struggle, like we have a good one for Noah. Like the struggle to find a good thumbnail designer, like, because designer and thumbnail designer is not the same thing, right? Like a designer at like a Airbnb or whatnot, you know, like their skill set like is not like, if you just take any designer and you bring them and you ask them to do a YouTube thumbnail, like they're gonna suck. And I know you probably know, because like we've tried, right? We've tried working with like just a regular designer. Like you need someone that really understands YouTube and like click through it. Like what's gonna like what gets people to click. It's like a very different, it's like a different science than like what looks good, you know? Like the best looking thumbnail is not always gonna be the best performing thumbnail. Yeah,
I think was you I was saying that very arrogant thing to, when I was like, you know, you could put me in the same room as like the 10 best graphic designers in the world, and I'm like pretty limited. Like I can do Photoshop, I can make basic thumbnails, but if you put them in the same room, you gave us all a brief, you know, here's the video, here's the images, make a thumbnail. Like I would bet my house that I would make a better, not a better looking thumbnail, because they're going to make something beautiful, but a more clickable thumbnail. Because you know, over all the years of experience of working on YouTube, I'm like, well, you know, saying this in the text is way more engaging, or, you know, showing this angle or using these colors, you know, whatever. And I think if I was actually speaking to a thumbnail designer, I've given advice to some thumbnail designers I've talked to before, I would say just obsess over the concept side and the actual, you know, what makes people click. And I was talking to a guy recently, and he was actually 17. He's from the US. He's a thumbnail designer. And I reached out to him because I really liked his bio. I'd love to remember his name, because I would like to name drop him, but I can't remember his name. I think it was like V Design or something like that. And in his bio, it said, you know, I help YouTubers increase their CTR and maximize their reach. So it wasn't like I design thumbnails or whatever. It was like he was like straight up saying what he does. Like, I help YouTubers. And he wasn't a consultant. Like, he doesn't come in and say, here's the ideas you should make. But he essentially, from what I could tell, sees the brief of what the YouTuber wants, and he works with them to come up with the best concept. And I think if I was advising a thumbnail designer, or anyone listening to this that is interested in being a thumbnail designer, it's exactly like you said. Like, you want to get really good at understanding why people click. And sometimes, like, I've had this critique before of like people sometimes kind of like joke about certain thumbnails. I remember I saw this designer on Twitter a few years ago who had like said, look at this, look how bad this thumbnail is, let me recreate it. And he recreated it, and the one he recreated was way visually better. But I remember I replied to him and I said, I guarantee that the previous one had more clicks. And I was like, it looks amateur, and it probably is amateur. Like, the creator probably did it accidentally, but the way he's got this framing and the way it's an action, it's just way more engaging than the really clean and, you know, pristine one that you had. So it is an art form. It's like, I think clickbait theory, clickbait theorists, that's going to be a thing, a clickbait specialist. There needs to be more of those out there, not just designers.
So breaking down, just because we're on this, and then I want to dive into more of the consulting stuff, but like breaking down the YouTube, like some of the YouTube things, like if you're into design, graphic design, like thumbnail designer, right? Like if you're into video editing, obviously like editing videos or leaving or like if you're more of like if you don't particularly like the editing but you love the like refining, then like leaving comments, like basically leaving comments on someone else's edits and like trying to like being a strategist in that realm. If you like writing, if you're kind of like witty, or if you're a good writer, like writing hooks, writing scripts, writing titles, like if you're like more of like the copywriter skill, is like writing really clickbaity titles that work on YouTube. Any other ones that you can think that I haven't mentioned?
I think like an actual data analyst, like someone that goes in and looks after the back end. Like, you know me, because we've talked about this before. Most channels get to a point where they can't learn that much from their data because it's so like nuanced, and essentially the most important things to look at in data are, views. Like that is the most important metric. But for a lot of channels who aren't as kind of on the ball with that stuff, they sometimes need someone to just go in and say, here are the things to focus on. Let's take a look at your retention curves. Like I mentioned him a bit earlier in this call, but there's a friend of mine called Mario, and he essentially, I remember we talked in probably like 2020 about this, and he was like, you know what I want to do? I want to just become like a specialist, and I want to become a retention specialist. And that's what he does now. He just obsesses over retention, and he studies retention. He just spends ages looking at retention curves. And I think if I was advising someone to break in now, I might not do what I'm doing, because I think what I'm doing is good, but it's challenging to get to this level where you can have authority in all those different areas. And sometimes it's not just about knowing stuff, it's about having authority. Because when you and like for a Noah video, when you ask me about something, if I give you the wrong answer, that's going to lower my authority. And if I'm like, oh, I don't know, I think, I'm not sure, if I'm too like kind of hesitant about recommendations, it just loses my authority. And it's clear that I maybe know roughly what I'm talking about, but I don't have enough context to know fully. But if I was advising someone at the kind of start of their journey, I would do what Mario has done. I would say, okay, what's an area I really am passionate about? Maybe it's thumbnails, maybe it's titles, whatever. Maybe it's intros, maybe it's just overall retention. And become a specialist in that, obsess over that, get really good at that. So yeah, there's like data analyst, the creative director role is kind of more on the kind of planning side and the coming up with ideas and thumbnails in the first place. Obviously scripting, ghostwriting, there's just
producing is another one, like helping the implementation of the video.
Yeah, and there's the thing is, if you get really good at that, like if you become a really good YouTube producer, you can kind of work with anyone, because people are always trying to hire. Like I know, like Jimmy, MrBeast is hiring at the moment for, a YouTube producer, and he hasn't found anyone good enough yet. And that just tells me that there's probably not, that the scene isn't developed enough, because he obviously has a really, really high standard. But like he's not trying to hire, because if he wanted to hire an ex Netflix producer or Hollywood producer, he could. He's got the finances to do that, but he wants to hire someone that's really experienced in YouTube.
Is that on Twitter that he posts that, or does he have a job board?
If you go to MrBeast
we'll link
Jobs,
it up in the description.
MrBeastJobs.com, I believe the website is. He's got his own like platform just for his own jobs for his own business. And I'm pretty sure he's got producer roles, content strategists. I think he might have a thumbnail role. I'm not sure. I haven't checked it in a little while. But people like him, people like these big creators, they're constantly looking for talent. So yeah, producer's another great one. And the interesting thing is every channel, especially when they're in different niches, they have different requirements as well. So for example, a video essay channel might need a full-time motion graphics artist, an animator, or someone that just, writes or does the artwork for, the animations or whatever. So like every channel and every niche has slightly different requirements. So for example, like a video essay channel doesn't really need an in-person producer, but they do need maybe a remote producer that can help to structure the videos and make sure everything's moving. So yeah, there's just so much jobs, so much opportunities out there.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So actually, like before moving on, if someone has it as a goal that they want to work with MrBeast, like what advice would you give them? And later in the video, I'll ask you the same thing for consulting. But like for now, like if someone wants to work with MrBeast or like one of the best in the YouTube space, like what advice would you have for them?
I'd advise them to not I'd advise them to not do it straight out. I'd advise them to go work with a smaller YouTuber. Doesn't even have to be a small YouTuber, but just someone else for a year or two, and you just get really good there. Because if you come to him or anyone that size or that level of YouTuber and you're like, hey, I want a job, I don't have any experience, but I have my own channel, and then he goes in your own channel and it's kind of average.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're like, hey, I want to work with you, I spent 2 years working for this person, I spent a year working for this person, look at the results we got, look at the videos I helped edit, look at the thumbnails I made. If anyone listening to this were to DM me and say, hey, I'm really interested in thumbnails, I would love to just even like shadow a YouTuber for a month or two and work with them and see if there's enough value for them to offer me a full-time job. Like I would have a list as long as your arm of YouTubers that would say, yeah, let's do it. So I would advise people to work. I'm not going to say work for free, because that's always up to the person's individual choice of whether they want to do that or not. But work for a little, you know, don't go into it with huge expectations of earnings. Find interesting channels, provide value, kind of the basics, and then use that to go work with someone else. Because I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and say, hey, could you get Jimmy to look at my CV? Like, no, if you didn't notice it wasn't good enough. So yeah. No, you know. So
you mentioned you're open, like your DMs are open, like if people want any suggestions for who to.
Yeah, if you're talented, even if you're not talented, even if you just want to learn, shoot me a message. I'm always trying to build out that network myself. And you know, if you're a hard worker and you've got skills already, or you're really eager to learn skills, you're doing me a favor by reaching out to me. So definitely shoot me a message. My DMs are open on Twitter.
Cool. Shoot me a DM too if you want to work with Noah Kagan.
Get that plug in there.
Yeah. So sweet. Okay, that was great, man. So first off, let's close the loop on MrBeast. And you said you worked with him for 4 months. What happened? Like, why only 4 months? And why did you guys stop working together?
Essentially, the way they run things, and I really respect this about them, and I think it's the right decision. But the way they run things is they definitely want people to be all in, completely all in.
Like a startup, right?
Yeah, like a startup. They don't necessarily want someone to be working with them and then doing other things on the side and distracting. They want people to come in and really focus and give them their all, which I think is the right move. So when it comes to me, I think it suited being something a bit more shorter, where I just came in and worked on certain videos. I got a lot of experience. They got a lot of value for the videos I worked on. But yeah, like I have my own channel. I also have my own ambitions I had my own ambitions back then to launch a bigger consulting business. And when you think of it like that, and I do think this is true even as a you know, an employer myself now who has employees too. If you've got someone that's an entrepreneur working in your company, at some stage they're going to leave, you know, or at some stage they're going to go work somewhere else. So we did talk about like there was an offer on the table, a contract of a longer term deal together, of working together, and I gave up my other clients and stuff. But me and Jimmy just had a call and we just were like, yeah, I think this has been insanely valuable to both of us, but I don't think you're like a kind of employee. I think you're an entrepreneur. So we just kind of left it there. He gave me a really good reference. I learned an insane amount. And from there, I jumped and worked with lots of other YouTubers since, including yourself and Noah, and lots of other people since.
Nice. What would you think, what would you say are the pros and cons of like working for like a huge person like MrBeast versus starting your own thing? How do you make that trade-off? And I guess like at what point does it make sense to start your own thing as well, right?
To be honest, I think for most people working with Jimmy would be a dream. And I think when they originally gave me the offer, so I'd been working with him a little bit, and they gave me a more permanent offer. I took a long time thinking over it, and I don't think he was, I don't think Jimmy was necessarily surprised, but I could imagine like people on his team be like, what? Like, why would you not want to come work here in a way, this is insane here. But I think for me, the kind of person I am and for what I want to do, it's like, because like that could have happened. Like we could have worked together longer term, but I would have neglected my channel, and I just love my channel, even if it's not the most, like it does make decent revenue, but even if it's not the biggest revenue driver, I do love my channel and working on my channel. I wouldn't have been able to work with other YouTubers as much, which again, I respect and I understand why, but yeah, it just wasn't you know, it wasn't really my thing. I wanted to play around with lots of different channels. So I guess the principal difference for me is when you're working with one YouTuber, it's a bit more stable, especially if it's someone that size. It's a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun, don't get me wrong. But I feel like if you do have that itch to just do your own channel and work on yourself and work on your, you know, work with multiple people at once, yeah, probably not the right move. Or maybe just try it like I did, you know, maybe just try it for a certain period of time. Thing I like about working with multiple people, and as well, like I could work with, you know, I've worked with, and I could work with just exclusively like 10 and 20 and 30 million plus subscriber channels. And I have worked with a lot of channels of that size, but I actually find a lot of reward of working with channels who I would say are good and then turn them from good to great. Like that's one of my most rewarding things. Like I really enjoy coming into a channel and being like, you know, you guys are doing a great job, but I want to come in and essentially almost like get everyone thinking more about the videos, like almost like a bit of a cultural, you know, revolution in a way of like coming in and being like, let's just put more focus on here. Let's get my philosophy across, because I have my own philosophy for YouTube, and I try not to bend it too much, even though some clients need different things. I want to be like, this is what I want to do. This is the effort I want to put in. This is what I expect of everyone on the team. You know, these are people I want to bring into the team. I sometimes hire people for channels that I work with. And it's just been a bit more rewarding for me, more fulfilling to me.
Because you feel like, I mean, you have a bigger impact. I mean, you have a huge impact already on these bigger channels, but on the smaller channels, that impact is even more significant, right? Because like some of these things are probably a little more new, and like some of these change, like they're probably not doing the things that the multi-million subscriber channels are doing, right? And so the impact is just like that much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, we're like working with MrBeast. Like if you could add 5 or 10% value to this channel, that's insane, you know. Like I said earlier in the call, like, you know, 300% more views in like 10 months of working with the channel I worked with last year. Like that is life changing to that person. And also, I think it does keep you on the ball, you know, keep you really focused and on understanding what's working right now. Because right now I have a business channel I work with. I have a top, 0.1% really large entertainment channel I work with. I've got a real estate channel I work with. I've got a Minecraft channel, which we're trying to build into the biggest Minecraft channel in the world. That's our goal. So like we've got different channels, different spaces, different niches, and each one of them require different things and different approaches, different strategies. And I find that makes me a killer, because I can jump between lots of different niches and get really good in different niches. And I think if I just worked, say for example, if I just worked in Minecraft, then if you came to me and Noah came to me, I'm like, I don't know how to make a thumbnail for business. I don't know what's a good title for business. So I quite like being able to jump around and play. And there's
probably something to be said where like you're deep into those niches, but then you're able to bring the lessons from those particular niches to other niches, right? Which is like 100%. Probably one of the more valuable things even.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that is the real value add and the real benefit. Because I mean, it's sometimes I do it so naturally that it's even hard to point to exact examples. But even with Noah, I'm sure that there's been things I've taken from other people that I've brought into some of the suggestions I've made with Noah's channel. That big entertainment channel I'm working with, we actually took a very similar idea with that big entertainment channel, then an idea that I'd been working on with the Minecraft channel. Now, obviously, because they're completely different verticals, there's no conflict of interest. Like it's literally like a completely different type of content. But we did it with him. We got 1 million views with him. The Minecraft channel got like 4 million views with that video. So it's kind of like, it's a really nice way to test things. And if something works really well, I can also, one benefit as well is I can't share data between clients, and I don't. And I just don't do that. It's not what I do. But I can learn something from someone's data and, use that information to apply that to someone else. So for example, if there's a certain type of trend I noticed with this Minecraft channel when they do a certain type of video, I could keep that in mind. And then when I'm working with, an entertainment channel or even maybe a business channel, I could say, okay, we're going to make a video in a very similar structure to this. Here's where there were big dips in this retention curve. Let's see if we can fix that ahead of time with this retention curve. So it's a constant game of learning. And it's funny because I think at the moment I've probably over the last 24 months, I've probably worked long term, like in terms of like monthly retainer clients with about 10 to 15 channels with like less frequent. So people that just do calls with me every now and again, that number is probably closer to like 200. Sometimes it's just one-off calls. Sometimes it's like a call a month. Sometimes it's a call a week, whatever, just a bit more infrequent. It's probably closer to 200 channels. So that's 200 channels that I've seen data on and I've worked on and I've tested things with and I've got an understanding of. So right now, you could name a niche, like let's just say golf. And I know how a golf's retention curve looks. I know what moments in playing golf lead to people clicking off. And it's funny because usually those things translate a lot niche to niche. So as you can imagine, when you hit the golf ball into the hole, that's the end of a storyline. A storyline has been closed, and that's when people start to fall off really heavily.
That's
just like in, you know, if you're making a kind of Minecraft video and you kill the enemy, it's the same thing. You know, like the storyline has been closed.
So you gotta finish the video right away. Like golf ball in the hole, end.
Exactly. Exactly.
So can you? I'm fascinated by this, and I think you mentioned to me that you only work with channels that you feel have the potential to become #1 in that category, right? Can you talk a little more about that and how you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a bit of flexibility with that. It depends on, it's not like a complete concrete, it has to be that way, but I thought about that a while ago and I was like, how exciting would it be to work on channels in different niches and just be like, I helped build the biggest business channel. I helped build the biggest Minecraft channel. Like, because you even heard me say there, like, we're aiming to be the biggest Minecraft channel. You know, I helped build the biggest real estate channel. I've always found that just like a kind of like, for myself, for my ego, but also for my business and what I do, I think that would be a great indication of my skills. And the way I do think about it is, some people will just work with the first opportunity that comes along. And a lot of this is due to my privilege of building up this network and building up this experience. So a lot of this, I can't be like, oh, you should just pick and choose, because some people just don't have the choice, which I understand. But over the last sort of 12 months, I've just been very good at picking opportunities and picking channels that I see. I have to see growth with them. Like, I have to be like, because if someone is absolutely already at the top, quite often they're at a plateau.
Yeah.
And, you know, someone like MrBeast doesn't have a plateau because they're always growing. But like most channels,
when you see plateau, do you mean like they've tapped out kind of like the existing market of an audience for that niche, or? Yeah,
like that can happen. And I would always make the argument to myself that I could still go in there and try something new and fresh, but there's less of an upside because, you know, if let's just say you're a Minecraft channel, you're already on like 12 million subscribers. I'm not saying you can't be a 20 million subscriber Minecraft channel, but there's obviously less room in front of you, you know, and there's probably like a bit of audience fatigue. You've already had your best growth moments. And here's the thing that I'm not afraid to admit, and I think anyone should admit that's in this space, is it doesn't matter how good of a strategist you are, how good of a consultant you are. If you're working with a channel that's, you know, maybe in the wrong niche, or maybe the creator himself just has a limit to how entertaining he is, or maybe I don't know, you know, maybe they're just in a downward spiral ever. It doesn't matter. Like, it's like, you know, in football, like you could get the best coach, like, you know, Pep Guardiola. If you give him a team that is like bankrupt and like sinking, he might make them better, but he's not gonna like turn it around. You know, it's one of those things where you have to be careful who you work with and you pick opportunities that work. So essentially, with my current portfolio of clients, I've looked around, and even working with Noah, which is probably the only client we're going to name on the call for obvious reasons. Yeah. But even with Noah, like I think. Mitchell, who was originally working in the team, he had reached out to me. We'd done a few calls, we had a few conversations originally, and it probably took, I can't remember it exactly, but it probably took like a little bit of you nagging to get something going. And during that period, I was actually looking at the channel and I was looking at the opportunity. And I can say it now because it's obviously been so long since we've known each other. But at the time, I was like, I wonder, like, first of all, I was like, I wonder if the upside is there. I wonder if is the team good enough? Like, is Noah good enough? Like, I was thinking on these things. And I eventually decided, yes, you know, I think it is there. And it's never really been a big thing, like where I could say, oh, like taking on an extra 5 clients would make me an extra 20K or 30K or 40K a month or something. It's been more about thinking about the results first. And I just know that the money will be a byproduct of that.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Like you have like a waiting list. How many people do you have on that waiting list?
Oh, it's crazy. It's about 2,500 people.
That's crazy. It's like, so you have a waiting list, 2,500 people. You have more than enough people you could work with. So you have, like you basically faced with a problem of like, who do I work with, right? Like there's 2,500 people I can work with. Like which one is worth working with, right? And so it's like, then that's why you have to make that decision of like, and you can be extra picky of like, because at that point it's not about money, it's about, you can only work with so many clients, right? Because you go very in depth with your clients. So at that point it's like, what's the best racehorse I can bet on, right? It's like,
exactly.
It's like, who can I have the biggest leverage on, right? As far as like, who is going to implement the advice I have the best so it gets the most results?
Yeah, exactly. And it's, for me, it's a mixture of, I prioritize channels that I see as you said, like category winners, people that could be like the biggest channel in the space. And then also a genuine thing for me, and it might sound silly, but I genuinely think this is so important, is people that feel like they're going to be fun to work with, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always just fun to work with. It's also like, because it could be like, you know, one of my best friends is fun. He'd be fun to work with, but we get nothing done. You know, it's like, they have to still be people who are like, you know, smart, on the ball, on time, you know, consistent. But I do genuinely think of that. Like, what's the opportunity? Would it be fun? Would it be a fun project? And I mentioned a few times in this call, but I have a client that I signed in, 10 months ago. And we've been working together for so long. He's like, we've got such great results on his channel. It's been so much fun. And honestly, like, I mean, it's up to him, and I don't type it down to contract. So if he wants to say, Paddy, like, I think we've hit the ceiling with this, or Paddy, I want to like stop YouTube or something, that's fine. But like, as it's going, I'm like, I can see this just going on indefinitely, because we both have a great relationship together. We just meet every week, we talk, we have fun, So I think having the choice gives me that opportunity, because to be fair, like, I think generally speaking, YouTubers are good people, and they're usually interesting people who are working hard and are driven, but there's always bad eggs. There's always people that are, a bit of ego, or, a bit inconsistent. A lot of times because they're young. Some YouTubers are very young. They haven't had the experience of working in a job. So it's like, hey, the call time's at 6 and they turn up at 7 or something, It's like that sort of thing does happen. So I like to be able to do that, and having the waitlist is also nice. It's nice for my like state of mind as well, because the way I think about it is all my clients could fire me on the same day, which I don't think is going to happen. But even if it did, in the nightmare scenario, I wouldn't have trouble filling it up again.
Yeah, 100%. I want to talk a little bit about the business of being a YouTube consultant. So you mentioned you have between 10 and 15 long-term clients, or it probably depends, right? Depending on like you probably have like some churn.
It's actually, at the moment, it's actually 5 like long-term monthly clients that I'm working with, on every video.
On a retainer, yeah.
But then after that, it probably rises to about around 10 to 15 when I include people who are doing frequent calls. So like maybe a call every 2 weeks or call every month. And then but when it's extended out to people, I just do the occasional call with every few months, it rises again and gets higher. But that's generally where I am.
Is 5 what you found to be, I guess, like the best optimal level as far as like you being able to like be fully focused on each channel, and also you being able to like give your give a fair amount of time to that channel? Is that kind of like the sweet spot? Or because like we said, like you could take on like way more if you wanted to. So I'm curious, why just 5?
The reason for me, and I think I've got the capability to take on maybe 10 at one time. But for me, it's not even just about hours. It's also about like decisions, and I really believe in decision fatigue. So for example, let's just say you message me with Noah's latest video, and I go in and I leave the notes and I make decisions over what to cut or what to keep in, or whatever. Even with a thumbnail, you're like, what do I think about which thumbnail is better? They're quite easy just to reply to and just to do the notes. Like, it doesn't take that long, but it does take a decision. So for example, like I've got 5 people right now, and one client does 6 videos a week, one client does 1 video every 2 weeks, one client does 1 video a month, and one client does 3 videos a week. And I have a hand in every one of those videos in some form or the other. Like, I work on those videos, whether it's reviewing the video, thumbnail, writing the titles, ghostwriting the intros. Like, I'm involved with all those videos. And then consider the fact that I also have my own channel as well. I could do it, but I think the quality would drop for the client. And I think I would just kind of not be excited about it, because when you like, yesterday we were talking about one of Noah's upcoming videos, and I was excited to give that feedback. I'm excited to work on that video, and I'm like, this is an interesting thumbnail. I think this is a really good video. Like, I wonder what views it will do. It excites me, and I like going to people's studio and being like, how did it do, and checking and seeing the views.
Yeah.
But if that's 10 channels, I can imagine it getting to the point where like, oh God, now it's Noah. Oh, now it's this person over here. It's just jumping around too much. So I found like 4 or 5 clients to be a really nice sweet point. And I have been working on solutions to scale, because obviously a real, businessman would look at my opportunity and say, you've got 2,500 people that want to work with you. And it's not even just 2,500 people who have registered interest. These are 2,500 people that have filled that entire form, know the costs, and want to do it. So it's a lot of people. They would say to me, create a program, create a course, and maybe hire a team underneath you to help manage the demand and give them clients. And I'm working towards things in that area, but I'm very patient with it. I don't feel like there needs to be a rush. And the thing for me is I probably could have made, millions of dollars if I had put together like a really bad YouTube course about a year ago and just sold that instead of doing the consulting. But here's the reality. People that would take that, the success rate would be much lower. I currently have a 100% success rate with clients that I work with on a long-term basis. So the success rate of a course is out of my control. It's much harder to do. Also, the quality of material wouldn't be as good as it would be if I made one now, because I've worked with all these clients on a continuous basis and learned so much about YouTube that I'm a much better YouTube consultant than I was 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 24 months ago. And I think if I tried to scale what I was doing too early, it would have led to just a lower quality of service. So the way I've been doing it is just gradually building up, and I am going to eventually launch, I wouldn't call it a course, but a kind of a program, definitely targeted towards bigger channels, kind of advanced program as opposed to a bigger
like a cohort-based course type thing where it's like more involved.
Yeah, exactly.
Coaching in a way, group coaching in a way, yeah.
Because the way
coaching.
Yeah, the way I kind of broke it down is like I do the biggest metric in my business is success rates. That's the thing I prioritize the most. That's the thing I think about most. So people who worked with me, did they increase views or revenue or whatever they determine as success? Generally, it's views. It's an increase in views. So that's the biggest metric in my business. That's the thing I think about the most. So what I know right now is the clients I work with long term at present, and I know this, like I just said this, but I know this won't continue forever. But that success rate is 100%. So everyone who's worked with me long term has increased views. And then when I go down to let's say the calls that I would do maybe once every 3 months or just maybe one-off calls, the success rate for that is lower, obviously, because there's less touch point. It's just a one-off thing. So the success rate for that, in terms of an increase in views after doing the call with me, a significant increase in views, not just like a 1% increase, maybe a 10% or more. I can't remember the metric we used to calculate. That's like around 70%, which I still think is really good for just a one call to have a 70% chance of dramatically increasing your views after it. But then if you go down further, like if you were to look at a typical YouTube beginner course, the success rate in my opinion, it depends how you define success, but the success rate in my opinion is probably a single-digit %. So I was like, if I was to build a course that essentially took all what I do and what I learn and what I actually apply with clients right now and build it in a way so that I'm still targeting people and selecting the right people to work with, so good to great, like I talked about before. If I build something in that arena, in that area, I think I can still keep success rates relatively high, which is the most important thing, because I just don't want to like, get people to buy something expensive that doesn't help them. And then if I do that, I could then also, and this is another thing I'm working on, like have people underneath me. I've got someone underneath me that works as a strategist for me, as an employee strategist for me. And I've been training him for like a year and a half. He's worked with me for a year and a half. And now he's at the point where he's going to start taking his own clients. And I think that will keep his success rate high because he's got the experience and he hasn't just suddenly started doing it with lots of channels. I'm picking the right channels to give to him and I'm helping him. I'm kind of like, helping him along the way with it. So what I realize is by optimizing for success rate, I don't always make the most money, but I have the most longevity and I deliver the best service. And that's always what I've strived to do.
Plus what I really, I respect and I'm thinking more about as I'm starting to do consulting myself is like the enjoyment factor. Like you've prioritized enjoyment over like scale and money, right? And that's probably why you love what you do, right? And it's like, I feel like long-term that is the best strategy because like if you love what you do, you're going to like want to spend more time doing it and get better at it and just be in the industry long-term versus like burning out because like you're building a business and you're like starting to work with people that you're not really excited about. And so I really respect that as well.
That's exactly it. Yeah. It's short-term versus long-term essentially. And it's not even, because you could be kind of, from what I've just said there, even just reflecting on what I've said, it could almost be like picked up as like virtue signaling of like, oh, I'm so good. I don't prioritize money. I just prioritize success. It sounds like almost virtue signaling. But the kind of cold hard truth of it is, I think I will make a lot more money doing that anyway. Because as you said, I'll have more longevity. I'll enjoy it for longer. I'll probably want to do more work. And, word of mouth is huge. So like even the way I've thought about it now, like everyone has said for years, like, why haven't you made a course? Like, why haven't you made a course? But when I do launch something, even if it's not like your typical kind of YouTube course, if it's something more like a program, a cohort-based thing, I think it's going to sell really well because I've spent 2 or 3 years where I could have had a course where I've actually put in the hard yards and worked with the channels and had fun and enjoyed it. And I think short term, I would have made more money doing that, like trying to scale really quickly. Long term, I think I'll make a lot more money the way I'm doing it and have a lot more fun along the way.
Yeah. You mentioned your team. So you have one guy that you've trained up to kind of be your associate consultant. Do you have anyone else on the team? I know you have an assistant. Is that the whole team or?
Yeah, my team right now is my strategist. So he's the kind of junior consultant he actually started out as an assistant for me, but he was working, he's a YouTuber himself, and he was working on the reviews and the work I'm doing. So even with Noah, like he's like gone through and reviewed some of Noah's videos for me, not in terms of the frame, but in terms of like after it being published, I'm like, what did you think of this? And he gives me some notes of things to focus on for the next one and stuff like that. So he's helped me with clients, he's helped me with calls and prep work. And I realized he was really good, and he gave me a lot of interesting stuff, and he helps me with my videos as well. So I've essentially like, would you be interested in doing your own consulting work underneath my umbrella business and this sort of stuff? And he's like, yeah, I actually would. And we've been working and building that up. So that's him. And then I have my assistant, PA, so important, like actually I can't describe how important she is. She doesn't even work full time, but she does work really hard for me, and she helps schedule everything, invoicing, taxing, making sure I'm in the right place at the right time, making sure I turn up to this today, everything, just constantly reminding me and keeping my life in order. And then I have a bookkeeper who obviously just kind of does all the accounting stuff, like the invoicing, everything in that way, just the finance way. Obviously I have accounting as well. And then I have just more kind of contractors, so people I would dip in and dip out of, like, can you help me with this thumbnail? Or can I bring you in to help with this client on his thumbnail here? Or, can you help me edit with this video or stuff like that? So it's a mixture of contractors. So it's a team of 3-ish, and then contractors as well on top. So it's relatively lean. It's quite small.
I also want to ask about, so how much do you charge on average, like your long-term clients, like the 4 or 5 that you have? And then how much do you charge an hour? Just to give an idea of like what a YouTube consulting business can look like.
For sure, yeah. On the long-term clients, it varies between about 2K and about 8K per month for the long-term clients. Okay. And that's highly dependent on the hours invested and how much support they need and how many videos there are and stuff in that regard. And then in terms of my hourly rate, in terms of one-on-one calls right now, it's $695. But for the longer term work with clients, with the retainer clients, if you actually broke it down by hour, it works at about $500 an hour. So it's a big jump from $30 or $40 2.5 years ago or 2 years ago, whenever that was.
Yeah. Nice progression. And I wanted to ask you about, like, have you considered ownership in the channels that you're helping? Because like you're obviously having a huge impact, and I feel like some of these smaller channels that might not be able to afford you, but in which you see a lot of promise, like, is that something you've considered, like taking it almost like we were talking about, like YouTube channels as startups, right? So like as a early employee, early strategist, like have you considered like taking a % equity in the channel in exchange for like your services, like for free?
Not in terms of ownership, because I think ownership is quite permanent, and also it's like it's a difficult thing to structure, because if I was a bad person, I could just work with someone, get equity, and then just leave and not help them anymore. And that's kind of an imperfect solution. So more along the lines of what I've been working on with clients, and I'm moving towards this model more, is like a performance revenue share. So maybe a percentage of it is paid per hour, and then a percentage is paid based on views in the channel, which gives a lot more scale to what I'm doing. So with the Minecraft channel, for example, like we're doing like 3-4 million views a video, and we're working on that agreement together. It does depend on the size of the channel, and I also think it depends on the individual as well, because some people just they have no problem paying you a very high hourly fee, but if it's like percentage, no, some people just aren't down for it, which I understand and respect as well. But I think it is a model I'm looking into further and trying to build out better ways of doing it, because it's the ultimate way to tie your success together. And there is a small channel at the moment who I'm advising a little bit over DMs, just free, just because he sent me a really good message. So it's just like, I couldn't ignore him. So I'm just giving him a bit of advice over DMs, and like he does not have enough money to afford to work with me. But if he was interested, and if I think there's a good opportunity there, I'd be down for doing like a kind of 12-month revenue share agreement together, where I take a small percentage of the channel and we just essentially try to blow him up. Because I think it's possible. He's on like 12K subs right now. I think it's possible with my guidance, based on the niche he's in, he could be on like 500K subs by the end of the year. So if I was like a 10% revenue share or something, if he thought the value was there, and if obviously I thought the value was there, that's where it becomes quite interesting. But long-term ownership, still something I'm a bit kind of on the fence about.
That makes sense. Yeah. A couple other things, and there's so much, man. There's so much to cover, which is I'm very happy with how this that we were able to reshoot this. But so you mentioned you're starting to do some consulting with, I don't know if you can talk about it, but it's like some consulting with some big brands. I want to call it like high ticket consulting with big brands. Can you talk about that? Or
I can't reveal the name of the brands yet.
Okay. I'm glad instead of that.
Yeah. But yeah, you know the names of the brands.
Yep.
But yeah, I've been working with some billion-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, and I think that's a nice progression of what I've been doing, because working with YouTubers I find is really fun. But obviously the bigger companies, they have bigger budgets, they have different expectations as well. So like let's just take an arbitrary brand. Let's just say Coca-Cola, which is not the brand I work with, to be clear. But let's just say Coca-Cola, like 2 or 3 million views to them on YouTube is worth a lot more than 3 million views to your average YouTuber, because like how much would they pay to get 3 million views on an ad, on TV? Yeah. Like Coca-Cola, I don't know how many people watch the Super Bowl, like 100 million. So like 100 million people watch the Super Bowl, of which maybe 50 million of them actually have the ads on at halftime and they actually watch the ads. And they'd pay like $10 million for a 30-second ad slot. So they'll pay 10 million for essentially 50 million eyeballs on an ad. But what if you said, here's an entire, like, here's a YouTube video with 50 million views. Your brand is the entire focus of the whole video. And you can monetize it as well if you want with ad revenue, but you'd probably be better off not. That's like 50 million people seeing their video. Could they spend 10 million to make a video that gets 50 million views? I think they could. They could pay someone like me to come in and craft an idea, and they could, use a huge budget on production and maybe bring in some celebrity presenters or have a YouTuber feature in the video. And they could essentially get the same level of viewership, but that viewership would be way more engaged, and it probably still would be cheaper. They pay 10 million for the ad. I think they could still get viewership like that without $10 million. So yeah, it's really valuable to brands, and it's been an interesting experience. I first started doing it in December of last year, and yeah, I've just signed a contract with a really big European brand at the moment. So I'm flying out to them, to their headquarters next month. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to see how it goes, and maybe I can talk more a little bit later when we do this again or something.
Sweet. And one more thing, you had mentioned to me that you're funding different channels on the side. Is that still something that you're doing?
What I plan to do, like one of the long-term plans I have, is to build a fund together and actually invest in the clients I work with as well. So I'm not currently doing it, but I have been trying to get to that point. And I think it's like a really nice model, because that's where ownership does become possible. Because it's like how good of a deal does this sound to you as a small YouTuber? We'll give you 100K for 10% of your channel, and you get Paddy Galloway to work with you as a strategist for 12 months or 24 months.
It's a great deal. And this comes back again to the startup analogy, right? Of like getting an angel investor that's like a successful startup entrepreneur already, right? Like this is like the exact same thing in the YouTube space. Exactly.
So yeah, I'm looking into that very carefully and seeing the opportunity there. And I also want to, because I obviously have my own channel at the moment, but I also want to, because all this experience and knowledge I have of YouTube, I feel like I can blow up channels in like not any niche, but in a lot of different niches. So I'm also working on building like a bit of a production house, or a bit of a production company here in Ireland that's going to be shooting, content for YouTube channels that I'll own under the umbrella, and I'll actually hire a team to build that. So I've been kind of looking into that.
That's what I remember you mentioning.
It's going to be really interesting when I get that running.
Nice. Awesome, man. I want to like, how do you manage all these things and still manage to like put out videos on your personal YouTube channel? Because like being behind a couple of YouTube channels, like I know how much work goes into like making a video, right? And so it's like, how do you find the time?
I mean, I do work really hard, to be honest. My daily routine right now is 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Every weekday, and I try to, sometimes it bleeds into the weekends, but generally that's what I do per day. So I don't know how much that works out a week, probably like 60, 70, maybe 80 hours a week. So I'm working really hard. I'm trying to balance everything. With the channel, like, I mean, like the upload frequency isn't too intense. And I can actually make those videos relatively quickly, and by relatively quickly, they still take a lot of hours. But essentially,
how many hours?
I can do them in a big chunk. So for example, I would say roughly about maybe like 50 hours, and I could do that over the space of like 4 days. I would just work really hard. I just make sure I don't have too much on for those 4 days. Maybe I use the weekend, so Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I could just, you know, work from the minute I wake to the minute I sleep, work from the minute I wake to the minute I sleep for 3 or 4 days in a row, and I can make a video. So I think if I was trying to constantly make videos in the background while doing all this other work, it would just get unfeasible. So I just take a weekend and then a Monday and Tuesday and make sure I don't have too much on and just send it for those 4 days. That's how I'm managing it. But I am trying to, because I still write voiceover, thumbnail, animate, I do everything, which is an error, which is a mistake. Like I do have an editor that does help me with certain bits, but I'm still trying to figure that out because I think I could make more content if I had a better team, definitely.
Building a team around your own channel. And as far as the consulting stuff, like how many hours of calls do you do a week, and like what does the life of a consultant, like day in the life of a consultant, what does that look like? I'd
say on average it's about 15 hours of calls a week, like actual one-on-one calls, 15 hours. Now sometimes they bleed over, and if you kind of look at the, you know, sometimes calls go on a bit longer or whatever, probably close to kind of 20 hours maximum around that for calls. I think if you're doing more than that, you're probably going to burn yourself out. So about that many calls per week, and essentially the way I've structured it is most, if not all, my calls are on Thursdays and Fridays. So I put, like for example, on Fridays I'm essentially in calls from the minute I wake up to the minute I go to sleep. It's just calls all day. The reason I do that is because I do really value having days, which are usually Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, where I have a lot less on. So for example, like today I'm doing this podcast and I have one call tonight, but the rest of the day was pretty free. So with that free time, it's not, you know, it's not non-work free time. I'm still working with that free time, but I'm able to, you know, do things like leave video reviews for clients, or actually prepare for the calls later in the week, or plan my own stuff, or work on my own stuff, or write these Twitter threads that, you know, we were talking about before going live. So generally a day in the life of a YouTube consultant, on a non-call day, I'll get up at, day in the life of a YouTube consultant, it sounds like a title. I'll get up at like sort of 7:30, 8 a.m. Probably go to the gym. I have a gym about 15 minutes away from my house, so I'll drive to the gym. Come back from the gym, have a breakfast. Then at 11 a.m. I will just probably I'll start the day usually with the admin stuff. I know some people say you should do your best work first, but I just like getting that admin stuff out of the way. So I'll reply to emails. You know, I'll reply to Telegram messages because all my clients use Telegram, so I have all the messages there on Telegram. I'll reply to all those in a big batch. I'll go through and do the video reviews that I have to do for the content, or thumbnail approvals, just make sure I get on top of everything like that. So that might take us from 11 a.m. to about maybe 3 p.m. or 2 p.m., maybe a bit longer. And then for the rest of the day, I would focus on writing tweets, like scheduling tweets for the week, because I think Twitter is really powerful. So Twitter threads, tweets, scheduling all that stuff. Maybe a bit of work on a video.
Follow him on Twitter, by the way. It's like, if you want the Paddy Galloway course, it's not available yet. Like, go find it on Twitter, because the tweets are good.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of growth, man, I'm not going to turn into a Twitter consultant, but I've figured Twitter out. I've grown insanely fast there. I think like this time last year I had like 5K or something, and now
where are you at now?
I think like 24, 25K, and I'm sure people have grown faster, but like within the niche of YouTube advice, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the Twitter audience is, I mean, not to say that the other audiences are not smart, like other social media platforms, but I've just found like the quality of the audience on Twitter is like, these are like very smart people.
Yeah.
And like very, like people that you would want to meet, you know?
I love Twitter. I think like that, the big deal I'm doing with that, you know, Fortune 500 brand, that came from Twitter. Working with Jimmy, first DM came from Twitter.
That's what I meant to mean. Like, I feel like the opportunities that there are on Twitter are like huge.
Insane. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think, and it's actually, some people just don't use Twitter, which I find is just so strange. It's like, you know, like I was talking, you know, Eric Decker, like he was in a group chat and he was like, yeah, like I need to get better at Twitter. I just never use this platform. And I'm like, you could find so much talent on here. You could learn on here. You could network on here. Like it's really, really powerful, I think. So essentially if I work from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on like client work, I maybe spend like, I don't spend that long on like coming up with tweets, but maybe like an hour on like my Twitter thread for the week, and maybe whatever. I do a newsletter as well. So I just kind of see that as you know, my time for my stuff and my content. And then typically I will also have like an hour or two of research in my day as well. So that's just like non-client work. It's just going on YouTube and looking at videos and seeing what's trending, seeing what's working on YouTube, seeing who's doing cool things, watching, like sometimes just watching competitors of some of my channels and seeing what they're doing and seeing what we can learn from it, to make sure I always keep my finger on the pulse. And then like when I get later into the evening, it's quite often just brainstorming business stuff. Like for example, I did mention I was working on that kind of potential program or cohort thing, like doing a bit of work on that every day and other things on top of that. So that's a non-call day. And then on a call day, let's just take this Friday, for example. Like this Friday, I'm going to get up at 7 or 8 a.m., go to the gym, come back 11 a.m. And this is Irish time. The reason I started a little late is because nearly all my clients are in America. In fact, 4 out of 5 are in America. 4 out of 5 are in America. So it makes sense for me to work a little bit later in the day. That's why I stepped at 11 p.m. working. But I will probably get back to the house after the gym. First call will be at 11:30 to 12:30. That call will last. Then I have half an hour to prep for the next call. That's 1 to 2. Then I have half an hour to prep for the next work. That's going to be maybe 2:30 to 3:30. And then I'll probably like have 3 or 4 other calls scattered out throughout the day. So quite often it's like 7 calls in one day, 6 or 7 hours of calls in one day, which some people tell me I'm crazy because it's a lot of calls, and it's not like I'm just sort of showing up for like a team meeting and being like, oh, hey guys, you know, it's me talking for that entire duration. But I find I can do it fine. And
plus, like when if you're batching all your calls in one day, it's like you're kind of getting energized from that, right? And it seems like you're smart about like putting buffers in between, so to like just like refocus and recuperate.
Exactly. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, pretty free. And then the weekend as well. I don't really do much work on the weekend, like much client work or call work on the weekend. So that's free as well. And then Thursday calls, Friday, a lot of calls. I quite like that. Some people would rather do a call every day, or like, you know, let's just say I'm doing 14 calls a week or 15 calls a week. They'd rather just like maybe 2 a day or 2.5, 3 a day or whatever, and spread them out. Yeah. But I just find I agree. Like I think when you batch them all together, it's done. And also I'm in the mood, like I'm on, like, I don't know what you feel like, but after I do a really good call, I just want to do another one, you know? Yeah. Whereas like,
there's like a dopamine kick from it, right?
Yeah. Whereas just on like a typical Monday, I might be kind of, like I'm really enjoying this like creative work, but I just don't feel like getting on a call. I have to like get my setup. I have to like, you know, make sure I look presentable, you know, that sort of stuff. So, no, it's what I found to work best right now. And it's the same advice I'm giving to my strategist, my junior consultant. I'm saying the same thing. I'm like, you know, just be careful about giving your calendar to everyone and saying, book me any day. Try to like schedule it around. And sure, like some clients are gonna be like, I can't do that. I have to do it these days. And you can make exceptions. And, you know, like next week I have a call on Monday and I have one call on Tuesday. So it does happen. Yeah. But generally speaking, because I know I could open up Mondays and Tuesdays, I could sell calls all day at $695 an hour. And I could make a lot of revenue, but I just know I'd do that for like a month and then just hate YouTube or just hate doing consulting work.
Yeah, so. And it seems like you're like by keeping the schedule, you're able to keep creative work and able to keep working on your own stuff, which is like feeding you as well, right? It's kind of like your own project that's like, I mean, probably fulfilling in its own realm as well. So very cool, man. Okay, this has been a long interview, packed with great knowledge. I have two more questions that are kind of in the same realm. Number one is for someone who's interested in doing what you're doing and becoming a YouTube consultant, how would you recommend they get started?
I think the first thing is probably not to start as a consultant. It's to start as someone working behind the scenes, which ties in a little bit to that advice we gave earlier about if you want to work with a big channel like a MrBeast or someone. I do think some people jump the gun and try to be like a kind of maybe a consultant too early, where they say, okay, I know a bit about YouTube. Now I'm going to just start, you know, doing 1 hour calls with people or whatever. And
like, you know, watch a couple of your videos and, and they're like, I'm ready. Yeah.
There's quite a few Paddy Galloway clones knocking about. But you know, some people think, okay, this looks like a good way to make money, but that's where the issue starts. You know, this looks like a good way to make money. You know, that's an issue. You know, you shouldn't think of it as a good way to make money, because obviously it is a good way to make money. But if you're starting there, you're already starting with the wrong thing. Like I never, as I said to you earlier in the call, I never pitched myself to someone. I never reached out. I never like, you might even notice, I never even mentioned it in my videos. I've started to mention it on my Twitter, but even with that, it's kind of subtle. I'm not like, hey, there's 10 slots left, let's book. It's very subtle. It's, you know, I'm doing this here. You can pay for this, but you don't need it. Here's all the free stuff. So for me, it's always been a question of, you know, making sure I have the experience and I have the results and the track record, because anyone could just say, I know everything about YouTube. Here's the call, book me for $500 an hour. But, you know, have you put in the yards? You know, I've made thousands of videos like myself, and I've worked with, and you don't have, it's not like a, you know, you don't need to be a YouTuber. You don't need to have made content yourself to be a good consultant or strategist. But even like, you know, have you worked with a YouTuber from the start up, or have you worked with a YouTuber over time? And I think first piece of advice is definitely to get that experience in. So if you want to be a thumbnail consultant, if you want to be a video retention consultant, you know, make 1,000 thumbnails for someone. Like actually just work on loads of clients. And like, I know, like I was talking to a really good thumbnail designer yesterday on Twitter, and I saw he was posting his own YouTube videos now. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Well done. Like you should keep building up your brand. And if you went to look at his portfolio, he's probably worked behind the scenes on YouTube for 4 or 5 years. He's probably made 1,000 plus thumbnails, maybe 2,000 plus thumbnails. So if he was to say, I want to start offering consultancy advice where I don't work as a thumbnail designer, I actually come in and work and help them build the concepts or whatever, I'm like, you've built up that credit in the bank, you know? So I think the first step is making sure you don't jump the gun and be like, oh, I need to build a course, or I need to become a consultant before working behind the scenes. So I think it's a really good idea to work as a channel manager, an editor. Like some of the best people in this industry of like consultancy and behind the scenes work, they started out as a thumbnail designer, they started out as an editor, they started out as a channel manager, a producer, a creative director, and then they branched into the bigger sort of consulting stuff. So I think that's the first step. I would also say just don't overcomplicate it, because if you're good, like if you've noticed about what I do, I don't really have any complicated like system. I do look at data, and it depends on the client, but I do look at data quite a lot, but it's not, you know, I don't have this big like structure or system around what I do. And some people want this template, and the reason I keep it simple is because what Noah wants and needs is completely different to what a Minecraft channel wants and needs. There's some similarities, there's some common trends, but everything needs a level of nuance and context. So if you're trying to build like this kind of system of like, you just doing a call with me and I know how to do YouTube, you're the man with the hammer that thinks everything's a nail. You know, you're just like, this is how I do things. Bang, bang, bang. But that doesn't work for this niche, or that doesn't work for that niche. So one thing I pride myself in, and it's a pet peeve of mine when someone says, oh, Paddy only thinks that because he's worked with, you know, MrBeast and this big YouTuber, and he has that philosophy for YouTube. I'm like, no, I've worked with channels of all different sizes and spectrums, and, you know, channels at the beginning of the journey, at the end of the journey, different niches. So I think have a very fluid approach to working with channels, doing a case-by-case basis. And it goes back to a thing we've touched on a lot in this call, but if you can pick your clients, I know that's not a luxury everyone has, but pick your opportunities. Like if you have a client reach out to you, they might be a huge YouTuber, but if they're on the decline, you're already fighting a losing battle. And it doesn't mean you can't turn around. I've worked with channels in the past who are in a decline and we've turned it around. It happens. But it's already difficult. What I would look for is clients who are in an ideal world, who have resources, so they have money to spend, not only on you, but also on a team. So if you're like, we need this person, they have enough money for that. Yeah. So a client with resources, and also a client who maybe is sitting, I describe it as like sitting on a gold mine, like sitting on like a really big opportunity and not having realized it yet. So it doesn't mean they have to be, like, because if you just work with people that are crushing it, if you come in, you can't point to yourself and say, I was the difference, because they might have been crushing it regardless of you. But if you're working with a channel that is like, you know, being in this position where they're like, they're good, they're doing okay, but I want to take them to the next level, I think that's ideal. So I always try to identify people who have a big opportunity in front of them. And I deliberately look for channels that like just aren't doing as well as they should be, because there's usually like low hanging fruit. There's usually easy fixes. Sometimes it's as easy as just sparking growth with one video that could take the channel to the next level. So I think that's good advice. And then, you know, keep it casual, keep it fun. I think that's so important. Like I know, if you want to go like this kind of acquisition route with consulting businesses, or build like your big firm or whatever, sure, like tie people into big contracts and, you know, offer these like different services and have like these really complicated ways of doing things. But, you know, there's people in the music industry, and there's people in other industries around the world, like even like law firms. And I know law firms get kind of complex and lots of paperwork and stuff like that involved, but they usually start with one person who builds up relationships. You know, like the best law firms start with like a lawyer who built up relationships with different companies or clients and then just built a team around it from there. It wasn't like, you know, here's like a big software product or here's our like scalable service or anything. It's sometimes just like building relationships and getting good results. So I think keep it casual and fun. I think generally just being good at communication with the client and expectation. Because I saw someone, and I won't name them, but I saw someone a while ago that in their messaging for their consultancy service, they were like, let me help you 10x your YouTube channel. And I'm like, what does that mean? You know, like 10x the revenue? Like, you know, are you actually telling them that you're going to help them 10x the revenue? Because that happens and it can happen, but that is a bold claim.
Yeah.
You know, that is a bold claim.
Probably just read Grant Cardone's book and he was like, let's go.
And you set the expectation wrong from the start then, because then that YouTuber is going to think there's an expectation that something's going to happen that's just not going to happen. Like, even like there's rare examples of this. Like I have worked with some channels I would describe as having 10x. That has happened with people I've worked with, but it's extremely rare. And I know my stuff. I've been doing this for a long time. So even for me, it's really rare to have that happen. So I think I'm really big on like saying, let's take our time with this. And like even when we had initial conversations of me working with you and Noah, with other clients, it's like, we want to grow. We want to bring this thing up. We've got goals. We've got subscriber goals we want to hit. But it wasn't like, hey, Paddy, save us. You know, that's a really important thing. If you work with people who are like, I need you to come save my channel. It's broken. It's not working. You know, you're working with the wrong people. You know, you're probably working with, you know, not to be too harsh, but people who have maybe got a victim mentality or they just don't understand that as your role is to come in and optimize and make things better. It's not to turn the entire thing around and like steer the ship, and you know, it's a different role. So I think a mixture of that.
Like the biggest advice is like picking the right client and like picking the fire on which you can throw like gas on, right? And just like blow up.
And on that same note, something I've noticed that's been really beneficial to me is I really strive to get results early. Now that's easy to say, because, you know, well, everyone wants to get results early, but that's in part due to picking people correctly and picking people who I see big opportunities with. But it's also like for those first few weeks, I will maybe push the bow out even further. I will do like over the hours, or I'll over deliver, or I'll put special effort into like the video ideas, or maybe I've been sitting on an idea. Like even there was a thumbnail concept we discussed for one of our first videos that I'd been sitting on that thumbnail concept for ages. And I was like, who would be great to give this to? And, you know, doing that at the start, the reason is customer buy-in. And that is insanely important for consulting, because you're essentially using your words and you're playing the role of the expert. And I don't like calling myself an expert, but that's essentially what the client expects. They expect you to be like, you know, the expert who knows everything and who is the person to turn to. And if you're doing consulting, you should be that. Like, you have to be experienced and know that stuff. But if you start strong, it creates this really good buy-in, which means that the client, and I think in the case of like knowing you, this wasn't even going to be an issue because you're businessman yourself and you understand how these things work. But with other clients, it's like, whoa, he delivered me results really early and they worked. And it's not a case of, oh, I'm going to get lazy now, but it's a case of if we have a tougher time in the future, which is going to happen with any channel, they know that I know my stuff. Because, you know, I've already proven myself. And it's like I've used this, I've used the football example before in this call, but like I watch a lot of football, and like with a football manager, you could take a great football manager and then another great football manager and put them into, you know, two different clubs. And if one football manager starts a bit slopey and doesn't start great and the results aren't really good, the fans get on their back, the players start to doubt his systems and his tactics because they're like, well, this isn't working. You know, whereas the other manager who could have just equally as good systems and tactics and playing style for the soccer team, he could come in, and if he gets like a few early results, the momentum is insane. Like there's like all the players are like, this guy knows what he's talking about, and both of them knew what they were talking about. Otherwise they wouldn't have got the jobs. But that momentum and that buy-in is so important. And even like with one of my clients, our first month together was a record-breaking month for him, and then we had a bit of a dip, and that dip actually dipped below the views that he had in the month before I worked with him. And that does happen. And it was like, when we look back at it and reflect on it, it was for multiple reasons. Like there was just like the videos weren't as good, or the ideas weren't just not as good that month. And there was a few other issues behind the scenes and it just didn't work out that well. But during that month, it was not even a doubt. Like there was not even a doubt in his mind that we were going to turn this around. And now we've 3x his views. And I think if I had started with that bad month and you know, then the month after that, we still hadn't got much results, you start to create this feeling of like, wait a minute, does this guy really know what he's on about? So picking your opportunities and finding ways to deliver right away and not get lazy,
deliver.
but just use that as a kind of almost like a proof point of this guy knows what he's talking about, because customer buy-in is so important for anything like this, because it's a lot of money. People have to spend a lot of money on these things and they want to see results. So yeah, that's the main thing, I think.
Awesome, man. I think that's a great place to end it. Did you have any final thoughts you wanted to share?
No, that was it. I think, yeah, with consulting, results are everything. You know, it doesn't matter how you do it. Like I kind of like made fun of like people who have like their systems and templates, but if they get results, by all means,
data
results,
doesn't lie.
Yeah. Results are everything. And I just know you can point to, like I can point to the times I started with channels and I can see a progression. And there will be a time where that doesn't happen because, like I said, you can't get it right every time. But if you want to work in this industry, if you're a thumbnail designer, if you're a consultant, if you're a strategist, if you're a video editor, having like a track record you can point to, that's that's the most important thing. The data doesn't lie. You know, here's a video I edited and helped structure that got 70% retention and got 2 million views. You know, imagine an editor said that to me. I've never heard an editor say that to me. But if someone said that to me, I'm like, wow, I want to hire you. I want to give you to one of my clients. That's amazing. You know, so results don't lie. Focus on the track record. And yeah, man, it was an absolute pleasure chatting. I think this was a really good conversation with lots of interesting discussion. Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to follow your journey over the next couple of years. Super excited to see you launch this potential course and just the results you're going to get for us and for the clients. So thanks for doing this. Follow him at Paddy Galloway on YouTube, Twitter, and let us know what you thought of the interview. Take care.
There you have it. I hope you got something out of this interview. I'm really trying to make this as valuable as possible to you. So if you have any feedback on how I can make this better, or if you have any questions for me personally, I'll get back to you. Reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is @JeremyJohnMary. You can also comment if you're watching on YouTube. You can just comment below. All right. Thanks for listening and have an epic week.